कहिए.
Hello, Mr. Piyush. Thank you so much for joining us. And
Problem technology. I've been waiting to join you, but unfortunately it took some time.
That's not a problem at all. We thank you very much for taking out the time to speak with all of us. If it is okay with you, I will now address the attendees and get the proceedings going.
Please go ahead. I'm all yours.
Great. Thank you. So to all the attendees, hello everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us today for the webinar with Mr. Piyush Goyal, Minister of Commerce and Railways. In today's webinar, we hope to hear from the Minister on the government stance and activities to help kickstart the Indian logistics industry and consequently India's economy. For those of you who don't know us at Flipwala, I just want to quickly introduce myself and the company. My name is Sanjay. I am the CEO and co-founder of Hon'ble, which is India's leading digital freight forwarding company. We use technology extensively to digitize the freight forwarding process and hence create a lot of efficiency and flexibility for our importer-exporter clients. Now on to the webinar itself. I'd like to spend a few minutes covering the format of the webinar today and the house rules. To begin with, we have Ms. Sangeeta Reddy, President of FICCI and MD of Apollo Hospitals, who will share her opening remarks. Following which, Mr. Shantu Bhatkamkar, President of Association of Multimodal Transport Operators of India, and Mr. Ramkrishna, past Chairman of the Federation of Freight Forwarding Associations of India, will then share their notes on the current scenario of the logistics industry. After their opening remarks, we will then have the Minister share his notes with us all. And lastly, I will be moderating the Q&A session before the closing remarks are delivered. If you have any questions, please leave it in the Q&A section of WebEx. And you should also note that the recording of this webinar will be made available on Flipwala's YouTube and other social media platforms. And with that, I hand over to Ms. Sangeeta Reddy, President of FICCI, for her opening remarks.
So namaste, good evening. It's a great pleasure to welcome all of you. But before we begin, I want to especially thank our Honorable Minister Shri Piyush Goyal ji and extend on all our behalf our very sincere condolences, sir. And we appreciate the fact that you have constantly been at work despite what has been happening, what happened in your own home, and we truly admire your unbelievable commitment to this, to the country at large, and we appreciate it and we're inspired by you. We have today, I think, a very important subject which we all realized the value of when it was disrupted. Logistics is clearly a critical driver of our lives as well as of the industry and the economy. And over the last 2.5 months, the COVID crisis emphasized the critical need across the country for reliable and efficient logistics. Logistics, transport, production of goods are all very intimately correlated or synchronized. And any major disruption, like happened during the COVID outbreak, has a negative impact on global production, global supply chains, trade, and consumption. In fact, the world trade is projected to fall by a record 27% in the second quarter of this year, according to UNCTAD. Having said that, I think by a combination of a very proactive government, very hardworking teams across the Indian resilience, and of course the Atmanirbhar package, we are hoping and we are quite certain that India will kind of change or show a very different trend and trajectory, and that we should bounce back quickly. We believe that logistics needs innovation, and COVID lockdown has shown us how quickly the operating environment, behavior patterns, habits of customers can all change. From my sector or industry itself, we saw the very quick adoption of telemedicine. People and the doctors moved very clearly to using digital mechanisms. And so while logistics is the key, and at this point talking about logistics, I must state how the Railway Ministry has been a proactive, supportive environment in enabling essential supplies across the country. Towards digitization, I think industry needs to find uh, creative means to enhance robustness and the resilience of logistics, and look at supply chains and do tech-driven solutions. Briefly, I want to touch upon three broad areas based on the research and the work being done in FICCI. The first one, of course, is that according to WTO, the global trade will fall by about 13 to 32%, depending on the country. And while it's heartening to see the signs of moderation in decline of the merchandise exports in India, like I mentioned earlier, we believe that the decline will be less in India than in other countries. And we've already seen that May is better than April. Export order situation is getting better, and we should be prepared and ready on all aspects to be ready to reopen and take advantage. The government has already adopted some very useful measures, whether it's the foreign trade policy, including MEIS, extension of interest equalization, the rupee credit, many other schemes. We appreciate that. And Honorable Minister, may I submit on behalf of the exporter community that they have been seeking additional incentives under MEIS for the creation of an export development fund. And I think this is critical because our aim and ambition in the export sector is large. We need to do a few things in terms of marketing, seeding the environment, quality control, education, enhancement of the logistics, and also an idea spoken about many times is that our commercial attaches must be strengthened, and our embassy should serve as marketing for brand India. Moving to the second point, sir, I think FICCI has had the opportunity to work in 4 industry subsections with you, and I'm aware that you are personally leading this. We were heartened when the Prime Minister also mentioned the tremendous potential of the furniture sector. This, at your prompting, FICCI had done the detailed reports on the potential in the areas of furniture, air conditioning, electronic components, and textiles. We've now proposed to the DPIIT to work further in some additional areas where India could emerge as a strong player. And we look forward to your continued guidance in this, Minister. Third, I think FICCI is very happy and proud to note the achievement of on the Make in India front. Again, under your guidance, sir, we've had long conferences late into the night where you guided everybody and inspired, whether it was in the domestic manufacture of masks, sanitizers, gloves, PPEs, and ventilators. All of them got a boost by your leading from the front. Just to state 1 or 2 numbers, which are, something everyone can hear and be proud of, over 165 distilleries and 962 independent manufacturers got licenses and started producing hand sanitizers, and the cost effectiveness of this product is being appreciated all over the world. Over 87 lakh liters of hand sanitizers were produced by May 1st, and in terms of over 42 lakh PPEs and 76 lakh N95 masks. So I can go on with this list, but the Made in India story is something that I believe will be the subject of many case studies and many wonderful learnings. Ladies and gentlemen, these are significant milestones, and indeed they inspire us to contribute to the Prime Minister's clarion call of Atmanirbhar Bharat movement. Let me just close by reiterating that FICCI is completely aligned to be supportive, to be proactive, to be positive, while we continue to state the problems on the ground, the ideas for enhancement. We are committed to work closely with the government in achieving this goal, and we look forward to a strong and self-reliant India. Thank you, sir, very much for your time, your presence, and your continuous interaction. And for all other members from the government and team, thank you for your presence and a warm welcome to this very interesting conference.
Yeah, Honorable Sir, thanks for the opportunity to interact. At the outset, let me express heartfelt condolences on behalf of the maritime community and the logistics sector in general. I will quickly share what is being discussed amongst our members and stakeholders. First, we will like to have a forecast of what government feels will happen in next, say, 3 months to 12 months for imports and exports. We do hear from our customers. However, they also are unsure and will like to have us understand from you and government and get back to them. There is a talk about new investments and some factories likely to shift to India. We will be interested in learning about it if there is anything being done on that front. We saw your news item about measures to increase export and reduce import reliance and boost domestic manufacturing. A small feedback, sir, if we went 20 years back, we would see that the actual user importer was about 95% of total imports at one particular port where we had kept track. Today we see that 55% importers are trader and perhaps the number has increased. Insofar as our sector is concerned, we see that in median the business is about 50 to 60%, but depending on location and commodity, the business is between 20 to 75% of equivalent period. We have retained all our staff so far and we have maintained salary levels. However, if the situation continues, we will require some support from government for paying salaries so that we don't have to cut on employment or reduce salaries. We have already made suggestions for national logistics policy. We feel that for controlling our logistics costs and making it more competitive, we will need a surgical operation where we have to look at one ingredient at one time, like it is done in calculus. For example, PPP model, we will have to relook whether revenue sharing helps the nation best or it is putting conditions of competitiveness, and whether PPP models are replacing government monopoly by private monopoly. We also now with such thin margins look at some salami cuts like varai cost, or maybe we will also have to look for the tax components of the logistics cost. Particularly for the road sector, we feel the tax component, the tolls and such costs are a big segment. We will have to make a look at it. Then we will also have to collaborate with customers and with government together on two elements which concern the customers. One is India has a very high detention of trucks in factories when the containers or trucks go for unloading or loading. In America or most countries, I know the standard is about 2 hours, which they are trying to reduce to 1 hour, whereas it is very standard in India to ask for 24 hours to 48 hours detention free period. Lastly, government has done a good help to MSME sector by bringing out several provisions for payments to MSME by the larger organizations. Maybe more work is now required in that area considering the current economic situation. With this, sir, few remarks and few suggestions. Thanks again for this opportunity. And I would request the next speaker, Ramakrishnan, to take over.
Thank you, Shantanu. Thank you very much, Shantanu. Honorable Minister and other government dignitaries. We as a logisticians really find something good, positivity in the most negative situation also. That positivity is what Sangeeta just mentioned about the digitization. Adaptability of the digitization has been the best by the logisticians. We are coming to the government policies. Shantanu touched upon the MSME. I would like to just mention that PM has praised our logistics sector in an uninterrupted supply chain. And we as a custom brokers have been a game changer during the COVID in the international trade of supply chain. both in import of COVID material and export of medicines. Sir, we have been requesting as a custom broker and a freight forwarder to have the MSME segment separated for custom broker and freight forwarder. So that request is with you. So we would request you to kindly look into it and recommend to the MSME. Coming to the next point of MMTG, we would honestly want a paragraph on digitization, and as a Federation of Freight Forwarders Association in India, we would send you a separate note by which we will give our submissions. The third point is today, because of the pandemic, the courier service and others have been disrupted. So if the certificate of origin is digitized, and if it is exchange of data could be done internationally, would be very helpful for the EXIM sector, especially for the exports. On the Make in India concept, may we request you to kindly look into the service sector as well. Now, the Ministry of Finance have said that manufacturing sector less than 200 crores should be given to the MSME sector. Similarly, probably for the service sector, for a freight forwarding, custom broking sector, if we could look into something for a service sector from the MSME angle. So we also have one issue which we need to bring it to your attention, is that there are government directives to the shipping lines and the CFS operators. Shipping lines have been gracefully accepting the directives of the government, but there are issues with the CFS operators. They also have a genuine issues, but nevertheless, we would want all these to be merged into the logistics department of the Government of India, the Ministry of Commerce, which could be much helpful to give the directives on the logistic policy. Sir, with this, may I request humbly the Minister, Honorable Minister of Commerce and Industry and Railways, Shri Piyush Goyal ji, to address the gathering. Thank you so much, sir.
Yes, I believe at the request of the Minister's office, we also have the Special Secretary of Logistics, Mr. Pawan Agarwal, over here. And I'd like, on the Minister's request, I'd like Mr. Pawan to chime in over here for a few minutes before we move forward.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you, Manav and Vicky, for this opportunity to speak to you on this occasion. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you, Dr. Mr. Agarwal.
Okay, okay. All right, thank you. So, so I had occasion to speak to, the sector through Vicky a couple of weeks ago, and this opportunity once again, gives me a better sense of issues that the sector faces. Thank you very much for, giving me this opportunity in presence of the Honorable Minister. As we speak, various things that have been pending for many months, we are trying to bring them to a closure, and most important of them being the National Logistics Policy. And let me, share with you that while the policy, once it is finalized, will be in public domain, but we are holding extensive consultations with all stakeholders, and all these points are being taken into consideration, including views that we have received from other ministries, because this logistics space is somewhat of a contentious space, wherein we have large number of ministries and agencies within the government also working in this area, and we have to figure out that what is the space for the logistics division in the Department of Commerce that we have to handle, and most important of them being the digitization part of it that brings in efficiency. You mentioned about time taken in loading, unloading of trucks. Is there some ways that we can bring in those efficiencies by putting the digital processes, by creating incentives for trucking companies and the manufacturers and other businesses to reduce these times and bring efficiencies. In addition to that, we are also looking at issues of manpower in the logistics sector. Uh, we are in the process of repealing the Multimodal Transportation of Goods Act by a more comprehensive legislation on logistics, and that is also in the works. So, with many of these measures that you will soon see coming, I'm sure that we would be able to provide a more robust logistics sector for the country, which accounts for 13 to 14% of the GDP. And if that is the GDP that we spend on logistics, which is comparable to what is there on the agriculture and allied sector, or what is there in manufacturing sector, then we should not look at it as an add-on in manufacturing or other sectors. This becomes a sector in itself. And I think that importance of the sector is now being recognized. And we are grateful that we are getting the support of the industry and other stakeholders in making it happen. And also the Honorable Minister is taking a very keen interest in this particular space, particularly bringing the railways and more freight movement onto the railways as one of the priority areas. I'm sure we will hear more about it from the Honorable Minister. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Pavanji. At this point, I'd like to ask the minister whether he would like to do question answer, or should we get a series of questions together and then have all the answers at one time and then the address?
What may be a good idea so that there's no duplication, that Sanjay, if you have moderated or if you have compiled what are the critical issues, whoever wants to raise those critical issues without repeating what somebody else has raised, then I'd like to hear comments from your senior colleagues, and then I can collectively try to respond to that and also message to all of you.
Sure, no problem. So what I will do is I will request some speakers from the audience who have questions to state them right now. Questioners, please be mindful to have no repetition. First up, I'd like to ask Ms. Geeta Uppal of Reliance Industries, where she manages the freight team for them, to state her questions to the minister.
Thank you. Thank you, Sanjay. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are audible. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Good evening. First of all, good evening and thank you very much, the host, and to the Honorable Minister for giving us this opportunity. I have two questions. The question number one being related to the current environment where we are facing as the being part of the supply chain and logistics for one of the largest companies operating out of India. India is one of the largest exporters. We are facing acute shortage of drivers, and we are looking at some solutions as to how we can accelerate the reverse migration, because today the exports are really booming up 3 times over to what we were doing in a steady state. And the reason for that is because of the domestic market is a bit low. So hence the idea is that how we can get the reverse migration to happen so that we don't face the driver shortages for longer than what we are facing now. Related to this point is, of course, the railway point. Because of the fact that there are less number of drivers available in the market, we are moving a lot to rail. To give you an example, about 170 to 190 trains is what we are doing on an average on a monthly basis. Now, of course, this is a much more expensive route for us. So we had a humble request to find a solution the way we had the liberty of empty positioning at a zero cost, if that can be reinstated, or some other benefit that can be given to the exporters, so that this delta between the road transportation and rail transportation can be reduced. That is part of my question one. And the question number two, again, it is related to exports. because we are, trying to be a much more export-dominated country than we were before. The fact that my export trailer, self-seal factory stuff container, once it reaches Nhava Sheva port, it has about 7 touch points. There are various agencies involved before this container can actually be gated in. Now, this means there's a delay of minimum 12 to 14 hours outside the port of Nhava Sheva. Now, how we can bring all these various touch points on one single platform so that we can enable to have this gate-in process within 60 minutes or max 2 hours. We have ports in India itself who within 2 hours, the trailer is released and it can go back and get another container back. And especially this is very critical during this time because we are already facing, as I mentioned, the driver shortages. So the earlier the trailer gets released, it can go back to my factory and make 2 trips a day instead of the currently 1.5 that we are doing today. So these are my 2 questions which I have placed humbly before the Honorable Minister.
I will just call on the next questioner, Mr. Vipin Vora of Continental Carriers, to state his question.
Sir, this is Vipin Vora. I'm the chairman of. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, Vipin, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. I'm Vipin Vora. I'm chairman of Continental Carriers. Leading freight forwarding company in India. Sir, I've got 2 questions. The first question is, we have been asking, Ministry of Commerce to recognize and give us industry status to freight forwarders and custom house agents. This request has been pending from the last almost 25 to 30 years, and we have been saying this that, till date, our industry has not been recognized by banks or any other, any other institutions. So one request is that, please look into this. There are states, like Gujarat and one other state, I think UP, who have already given this as an industry status. But we are looking at an all India level, if central ministry can look into this and grant state, industry status to freight forwarders and custom house agents who play an important role in all these days you have played, you must have seen in the COVID days and all. So that's my first question. And my second question is, sir, there is the SEIS license scheme, which is there on the, foreign exchange earning for the service industry. Now, our industry, our freight forwarders and custom house agents, they earn a lot of foreign exchange and they get it in the shape of services rendered and the freight services which they provide to the customers. Unfortunately, the licenses which are issued by the department are being challenged by the DRI. And now people have stopped applying this. And we have been asking for the clarification from the department to give us clarification whether it's allowed on what, whether it's allowed on freight, whether it's allowed on, profits or other things. And for that, we have written letters from the industry and from the PhD chambers of also. But unfortunately, we are not getting clarification on those. So these are the 2 things that just can be clarified. This will be a good boost to the logistic industry, sir. That's what, these are the 2 points which I wanted to raise, sir.
Thank you very much. And lastly, can I request Mr. Saif Qureshi of Cripps Group to state his question? Puneet, can you check on Mr. Saif Qureshi, please?
Yes, he's just been promoted. 1 second.
Saif, you're mute. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Unmuted. Can you hear me?
I hear you. Please go ahead, sir. Please go ahead. You're mute again. You're mute. Yeah.
One of the main problems is cash flow and staying solvent. revenues are not even 20 to 30%, while expenses remain at 100%. Add to this the problem, like other speakers said, of non-availability of workers, transportation, statewide different rules, etc. And it's a nightmare scenario for all industry. Central and state government PSUs are undertaking their utilities for large amounts, MSME and industry in general. How can the industry be expected to service the financial obligations to government in terms of taxes, banks, and other stakeholders if government undertakings themselves don't pay their dues on time? Can the Ministry of Commerce and Industry think of having a common portal where industry can post their overdue payments from these government undertakings and the ministry facilitate timely payments by coordination with the respective concerned ministry? This would be akin to a support and stimulus package itself by the Commerce and Industry Ministry without using any additional government resources or worsening the fiscal deficit, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Piyushji, I think those are the prominent questions that we have. Request you to take the floor and address the attendees today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bhatia. Thank you, Sangeeta ji, Dilip, Mr. Agarwal, all the speakers who spoke before me, Shantanu, Ramakrishna, Geeta ji, Vipin and Seth, my colleague Pavan Agarwal, who is now heading the logistics division, all the friends from the logistics, trade and business who are on this call today. Thank you very much for your kind words of solace, which I deeply appreciate and value. But as I say, tough times never last. Tough people do. And I think in some sense, COVID-19 has been one such experience. Many of us in our lives have never come across a similar situation on the scale and size at which we are facing it today across the world. Some of us may have experienced difficulties in our business, in our operations, within our sphere of activity at a micro level. But the entire world, almost in a situation, what was that, apocalypse now kind of situation, is something unheard of. And I must compliment all of you from the trade and business world, particularly the logistics industry, for the outstanding work that all of you did during the lockdown, particularly the initial stages of the lockdown, when we were gradually getting more and more clarity about the future, learning the ropes of living with all these restrictions. And it's thanks to the good work that all of you have collectively done, that for not a single day, any part of the country faced a shortage of food grain, petroleum products, fertilizer, coal, any essential product. A country of 130 crore people could keep the wheels of the supply chain moving well-oiled and ensure that at no point of time from anywhere in the country we got any significant complaints of shortage of essential commodities. Compliments to all of you for that. Of course, we do expect a fall in global trade, which will impact Indian trade also. Expectation of global GDP forecasts being lower than last year is now almost certain. Possibly India will have to also face the consequences of this falling GDP. Manufacturing has taken a hit, particularly in this quarter. A lot of countries are going in for protectionist measures. Trade wars, which are already affecting global economies and trade, are looming before us. And I think it's within these constraints that all of us will have to collectively also find solutions. As the Prime Minister said, this is a chance for 130 crore Indians to bring to the fore or bring to the table 130 crore opportunities. Each one of us can see how we can become the harbinger of good news, new opportunities, new ideas. And what will only help us tide over this will be our own desire to succeed, our dedication to overcome this problem and work towards a better future, and of course our determination to succeed at any cost. If we are desirous and determined, we will dedicate ourselves to success, and that's the only language that I think you and I, all of us, understand. We have to be successful at any cost. In fact, reminds me of what Rabindranath Tagore had said. Faith is the bird that feels the light when dawn is still dark. And all of us collectively know that we have a brighter future awaiting us as we go forward. And at this point, may I share with you one touch point, which is very encouraging, which I believe at least gives me the confidence that we are well poised for a turnaround in the situation. I was looking at the export numbers, and I remember in April sharing with some of you in earlier VCs, we were down by almost 60% in our export and import numbers, roughly 60% down. Even when we removed the oil exports and imports, we were still about 57% or so down. I'm talking of April. I'm happy to share with you that in May, things have drastically improved, and from a position of being 60% down in April, the May data shows that our overall exports are down 36%, whereas our non-oil exports, when you remove the POL exports, we are down only 30%. So from nearly 60%, we've come down to 36%, but non-oil from 57%, we've come down to 30%, just in the space of April and May. And May, mind you, the lockdown was still there in large parts of the country. That barely started easing up a little bit. As we move into the unlock one phase, the situation gets even more exciting. And our exports in the first week, 1st to 7th of June, is overall exports is at par from what it was 1st to 7th June 2019. So we are about 0.76% down. That's all. From 5.03 billion, we are down to 4.94 billion. Barely, 90 million down. 90. I think these are very, very encouraging numbers. Of course, if we remove oil, and I think that's a better benchmark to see, by removing the oil exports, because oil is largely import dependent, so our value add is very low. We are down by about 8%. Non-oil exports are down by about 8%. Sangeeta ji or Dilip ji will recall I had predicted this about a month ago. I had said that I expect May to be between 30 and 35% down, and I expect June to be about 10 to 15% down. I may be actually proven wrong on both these scores. We may be slightly better than what I had predicted about a month ago. And that's thanks again to a lot of good work and hard work that all of you have done, all the exporters and stakeholders have done. Large parts of the world are getting into normalcy, are opening up. Businesses are opening up very rapidly all across the world. Maybe we'll have some stress on certain discretionary spending sectors. Textiles may take a little longer, but on many other items, India's own global trade on discretionary spending is more skewed towards imports than exports. On exports, we are not exporting too much of discretionary spending goods. As the man from Reliance, Geeta Uppal, mentioned, Reliance is almost 3x in terms of their export numbers. So they've used their capacities to good measure, filled in the gaps in global supply chains, and where there was a domestic shortfall in demand, they quickly reoriented to the export market. I believe the steel industry did something very similar, and they're also largely focusing on exports right now. So all of these are showing us the direction in which global trade is going to move going forward. And I hope that by the time we close March 21, we would have recovered the lost ground of April and May also. It's not a small loss. It will be close to about $30 billion that we would have lost in these 2 months. So we would have a lot to make up for in the last 6 or 7 months of the year, even assuming the Q2 remains flat. So we'll have a lot of making up to do, but I have the confidence that our exporters and our logistics companies together will make that happen. Ms. Geeta, about your shortage of drivers, the railways is there to serve.
Yes, sir.
Why we'll give you as many rakes and trains as you want. I'll also look at what is this delta between rail and road traffic.
Yes,
I want you to have a conversation with Pawan Agarwal.
Right.
Share them your own experiences and what you think can be done.
Right.
And if necessary, Pawan will organize a joint meeting with the freight team of the railways. But we'll find solutions. I assure you we'll find solutions. I am right now at 30% of modal freight traffic. I've asked my teams to double that. I may not be able to double coal.
Right.
Because it's already quite at a large level through rail. I may not be able to double fertilizer and food grain also. Though, by the way, we moved double the quantity of food grain in the lockdown. And the railways ran all through. When everybody was cooped up in their homes, worried about their health, worried about the safety and security of their families, every railway man was on the road.
Absolutely.
24/7. We did not allow a single day when freight did not reach its destination. In fact, it reached much faster with the passenger trains not being there. And we moved twice the amount of food grain. Coal was less because of less power demand. Fertilizer, you must not have heard a single complaint that anywhere in the country a farmer had a problem with fertilizer. So it's been a tremendous journey of the last 2 months, 2.5 months, moving freight through the COVID lockdown period, ensuring that there's no shortages anywhere. And now we are looking at leveraging what we have gained in this period in terms of an experience with newer products. We started parcel trains on nearly 94 routes. 3,500 parcel trains have been run, sometimes even empty. Initially, many ran empty, but we did not stop that service. We wanted that service to be available and people to get the confidence that small cargoes, small lots can move through that. I've been reading the chat, by the way. Some people have shared problems about using the parcel train. Also, some rent-seeking complaints some people have written in this. I would urge you, Sanjay, to list out all these issues on the chat and share it with Pawan Agarwal, who will work towards resolving all these issues. But it's a very, very useful chat. My eyes keep going from the screen to the chat because some very nice thoughts are coming into the chat. And I would assure you, those of you who did not get a chance to speak, that whatever you are writing on the chat, and those who have not, I'd urge you to put in your issues on that chat so that we can address them also offline. Your Nava Sheva problem is a very genuine problem. About drivers, by the way, I would urge FICCI to take a lead in this. Talk to UP and Bihar. They are sorting out lists of migrants and sorting out different skill sets.
Right.
Only difference is this time around you'll have to care for the drivers and migrants to come back better.
Yes.
You can't leave them in the lurch. You can't let them fend for themselves. I think there will be a lot of good coming out of this lockdown, out of this problem that we face. The good will be in terms of a better future and security for the migrant labor. There'll be concern about quality housing for them. There'll be concern about their nutrition and good and their welfare measures. And I do hope all of us who are on this call, all stakeholders of business, all of us who hire domestics, for example, all of us will also be much more caring, much more considerate towards the migrants who leave their families, come and work for us, more out of compulsion to make two ends meet, to make a little money to send back to their village, to their families, for their children's education, for their parents' medicines or healthcare. And I do hope all of our stakeholders will, going forward, really look at these migrants as important stakeholders of our businesses. Now that we are feeling the pinch of the migrants not being there, I think we can recognize their value much better. But if you were to engage with UP, Bihar, particularly these two states are very proactively working to prepare dossiers on the migrant labor, list them out, look at reskilling and training them, and monitoring that they get a fair deal when they come to work back into the cities or into industry. But I'm sure you'll get the drivers back in. We have started 230 trains. Tickets are available on the way back. So I would urge those of you who are looking for some of the migrants to come back, or drivers or any specific skill sets, tickets are available on the way back. Maybe your recruiters need to go there and make a little extra effort. But particularly companies like Reliance can show the way forward by caring for them in a new way. In the post-COVID world, let them be as much your stakeholders. Make some quarters for them. You can do prefab very quickly, make some good quarters for them, provide good mess or facilities. I can share with you a very senior leader of the various associations that I've been dealing with, one of the big industrialists of the country. When I discussed this issue of migrant labor with him, he has assured me, and he hires some 6,000 of them. He has assured me he's going to quickly create quarters for them, air-conditioned quarters, and mess for their food and nutrition. And he worked out the cost because in his factory he has land available. The cost is only coming to 500 rupees per worker per month. Only 500 rupees for his good stay in air-conditioned room, 4 to a room like you have in Jebel Ali, Dubai and all of that. Food is of course separate, and these are air-conditioned quarters with washing machines and all in the basement, so that they can take care of their personal hygiene, their clothes are well sanitized, good toilets and all of that. So I think at least the top 10,000 companies of the country who are all members of ASSOCHAM, FICCI and CII should certainly consider all of these measures in the post-COVID world. Nava Shiva, Pawanji, please have a look. What is the specific problem? Discuss with Ajoy Mehta, the Chief Secretary. Something needs to be done at the state level. Talk to the port chairman and the shipping ministry and give me a report how we are resolving this Nhava Sheva problem. Nhava Sheva is one of our most important ports, and if we don't resolve that, mind you, business will start moving to the private ports. Then we'll be left with more PSUs to handle with problems. So it's important that we nip it in the bud and ensure good service to our freight forwarders and our stakeholders. Vipin, I don't know whether industry status really makes a big difference, but certainly the MSME status now as services has been given. So I would assume that probably you would be covered in the MSME definition. But if you still have a problem, do write into Pawan and we'll try to get a clarification from finance. Pawan, you may in any case write to finance to consider the industry status also, and also the issue about SCIS. Please resolve with DGFT and DRI or finance. What are their concerns? And if they have certain specific guidelines, let them clarify what those guidelines are. Why should our stakeholders suffer? I think once they know if they are not eligible, they will not apply for it. I doubt anybody wants to cheat or take any extra benefit. If they are eligible, give it to them honorably. If they are not eligible, please guide them that they are not eligible with proper clarification on this matter. But make sure there's no harassment at any stage. Of course, I'm aware that 4 sectors DRI is very concerned about. They have made some cases and they have been saying there's misuse of the SCIS. It may be a good idea to tell DGFT to try and clarify and close that loop. And if some wrong SCIS has gone, let's reverse that and close the matter amicably. Unless mens rea or malafide intention is found, then it's a different story. Save, you should be the last fellow talking about cash flow and solvency. Wait till I catch hold of you next time. Boss, all of us have seen problems in our life. What if there was a flood in Mumbai for 2 months? 26 ke baad, how long was your business closed? Boss, in life happens. I had labor trouble in my factory for 6 months. Now, if everybody is going to put everything onto the government, we'll never be able to resolve issues. You already saw, was it Moody's who's already downgraded India 1 notch and made our outlook also negative possibly, or continued with the negative outlook. Fortunately, Fitch has still given us a stable outlook. Not Fitch, I think Moody's or S&P, somebody now. I'm doing so many VCs, I'm completely losing it. But what I'm trying to say is that India has to balance our macroeconomic fundamentals, which with great difficulty. Post 2014, we've been able to strengthen nearly $500 billion forex reserves, Reserve Bank giving huge amount of liquidity support, bringing down interest costs, MSME sector being given 100% government guaranteed loan book, and several measures to open up the economy, to give you freedom from government interference, and really sustainable measures to prepare India in the long run is the way forward. Yes, there will be sectoral problems which we'll have to address. The Honorable Finance Minister is consulting with different sectors. And I can assure you that we'll be sensitive to whichever areas face the stress beyond their capacity to absorb. But I think I don't believe the freight forwarding sector as yet, or the logistics sector, has reached the situation, as you said, of solvency problems. I think that's a little bit of an exaggeration. In fact, I have been making requests of the sector, which you all have not been willing to concede, in terms of more transparency in your costs, in terms of more transparency in your shipping bills, shipping costs, the add-on charges. I have not seen your sector come out willing to consider any of our requests also. And Siva Salam had made many requests of yours. Pawan Agarwal can continue that dialogue. And I'll urge you to call Siva Salam as an observer to that meeting. because he remembers my earlier meetings. Your sector wants everything to be opaque, doesn't want to deal with freight with transparency. So we don't know what supernatural profits you've been making. So if you had come out more openly and more transparently, then maybe we would have actually appreciated that, yes, you are under severe stress and you need support. So someday, every action has a reaction. I don't want to be offensive. I don't want to offend anybody, but I'm doing some plain speaking so that as we move forward in the post-COVID world, we all work with much more fairness, much more transparency. That way, government also knows what your problems are, where you need help, where we can support you. But as things stand, it's actually the exporters and the other stakeholders who've been complaining significantly about not getting enough. Am I right, Anand? You were there in the earlier conversation.
Yes, sir, you are absolutely right, sir. Absolutely right. In fact, the directives of the government of waiver of ground rents have not been passed on by the shipping lines, by the freight forward, by the container freight stations, sir. So that's a constant complaint of exporters and importers.
So, without meaning to hurt anybody, I would urge you that don't be demoralized. Look at this also as an opportunity to improve our own productivity, efficiency, all of us. I mean, I find myself far more efficient today than I was 3 months ago. I've saved all of you the time to fly down to Delhi to meet me. Things will get better and better. What you have lost in these 2 months, I assure you, will be made up going forward without your having to increase the charges. But sheer volumes will come back. And in fact, the report yesterday spoke about a potential 9.5% growth next year. If we all stay the course, look at our targets of a 5% share in world merchandise export, work towards more self-reliance, expanding the Indian basket. We have a number of participants on this call. If all of us also start seeing what we can do towards Atmanirbhar Bharat. Do we need to import air conditioners? I don't think so. Do we need to use imported cars? Maybe not. Do we need to survive on products which are non-essential imports? I think all of us can play a role. Can we support, like the Japanese do, our own national industries rather than importing anything and everything irrespective of quality, even if it is slightly cheaper? In Japan, Indian steel doesn't find place, even if it is $100 a ton cheaper. But they prefer to buy local Japanese steel. Does anybody in India ever think that way? The reality is no, we don't. So I think it's time that we all also started seeing that what we can do towards a robust logistics sector, which is also a national right, which also looks at the nation first. Can we all work together to see how Indian shipping companies, how Indian freight forwarders, multimodal transport operators, all of us can work collectively? And then the railways will also pitch in. Then the road ministry will also pitch in to bring our logistics costs down from 14% to 9%, which is the immediate need of the hour. And I'm sure if all of us work together, this is possible. I would urge you to engage with Pawan and Anand Sarup and the team. See what we can do to help our manufacturing sector revive, diversify, expand our export basket, balance our trade between import and export, focus on the champion sectors that we are working on, particularly for areas like auto components, furniture, tires, air conditioners, agro products, food processing items, leather goods, so many products where India has competitive advantage, where we can expand our footprint globally, as well as increase our India market story. And believe me, the sky's the limit to the potential of India and to your own businesses. But don't go with a dejected outlook. Go with determination, dedication, and the desire to succeed. The confidence that nobody will allow you to fail and you will not allow yourself to fail. So let's work towards the future. As I mentioned, the export business is coming back very, very rapidly. Imports are still down by about 40%. Not a bad sign if it is non-essential imports. Matter of concern if it is raw materials or intermediates which support Indian manufacturing. So I'm also trying to do a little more deep dive into our import fall. But as the Prime Minister used the phrase of Swami Vivekananda this morning, addressing the ICC Kolkata, the simplest method to be worked upon at present is to induce Indians to use their own produce and get markets for Indian artware in other countries. I would like to urge all of you, and FICCI is a stakeholder in our effort towards Atmanirbhar Bharat. It's not about shunning imported goods. Where an imported good adds value to your business, get it. Where an imported tool helps you to do your work more efficiently, get it. Where an imported technology is good for us to engage in, must get it. So we must work in the global world, but at the same time, care for the millions, crores of Indians without jobs, without a proper income, who will get an opportunity as more and more Indians start demonstrating national pride and using Indian goods. And I'm sure going forward, this is going to become a very, very important element of our trade policy, of our engagement with trade and business. As regards the PSU, central and state government dues, if the logistics industry also has significant dues, can you please give us some idea of which are those agencies or departments? And Pawan, will you follow up with those ministries to try and see how we can get some of the old dues cleared, and if there are any controversies or discrepancies, get them to sit across the table on the VC and resolve all overdue problems. So I once again appeal to you, don't go dejected. Go with determination. Things are easing up. Things are sorting themselves out quickly. Let's all of us work together in that spirit of confidence that we are going to make up for this lost 2 months through sheer hard work, determination, and efficiency. And as any of you who's run a factory will know, or Sangeeta ji can validate it, it's always when the times are tough, when there are difficulties, when challenges are there before us, cost competitiveness is facing us, is becoming a problem. That's when we become more efficient. We start cutting the flap. We improve our productivity. And then when things get better, all of these improvements add to our profitability many times over. So I think this is the time to improve our efficiency. You see Reliance getting Every week they make a new announcement of an FDI. In the midst of COVID, if nearly $10 billion are coming into Reliance, and and you know that last year we got the highest ever FDI in the country. My own sense is this year FDI is not going to be any less than last year, because the whole world sees India is the oasis. India is the land of opportunity. India, where 130 crore people are aspiring for a better quality of life. That is the future, and you're all part of this future. So let's get out of the past. COVID is there to stay. We'll have to work within the parameters and the constraints of COVID. Some things will have to change in the post-COVID world until a cure or a vaccine is found. But let's all work with the confidence that we can do it, we will be successful, and there's no power on earth which can stop us. Just like we ramped up PPEs from literally 0 to 3 lakh a day. Just like we today have 700 testing centers against probably 3 or 4 earlier. Just like we ramped up testing from 1,000 a day to 100,000 a day. Just like we are self-sufficient in masks and sanitizers, we make our own rapid testing kits. India has the ability to do it. Let's go and do it. Let's achieve extraordinary results, because it's tough times, it's challenges that bring the best out of all of us. And I have no doubt in my mind that each one of you has the capability to give extraordinary performance in these trying times. And on our part, I will take all these suggestions and all that I've been reading in the chat that are guidelines or ideas for us to work on. We will positively work towards the suggestions that you have given, whether it's factory workers, carpenters, painters, technicians, drivers. A gentleman, Kashyap Kapadia, has very rightly said that now when they come back to the cities for work, we must make sure they get good housing, they get good pay, they get good income, so that they can live a decent quality of life. My best wishes to each one of you. Don't worry, sir. कोई हमने आपका दामन नहीं छोड़ा है. We are with you every step of the way. But don't be one of those who gives up. Be one of those who works doubly hard, just as each one. And Sangeeta must have done more, 30, 40, 30 pieces with me in this lockdown period probably. Mayank Jalan, whose program ICC Prime Minister addressed today, in the last VC he did with me, Dilip, you were there.
The 24th.
Third VC. You remember that, Dilip?
Yes, Mr. Minister. It's the 23rd.
It was his 23rd VC. Mayank Jalan, whose program Prime Minister addressed today. That was about a week or 10 days ago. Then I was not there for 4-5 days. But we are back on the job. Not even 4-5 days, sorry. I was not there for 4 days. On the 4th day, I was back here doing my work. And I urge all of you to, with that same spirit, get back to work, not cry over spill, whatever has happened in the last 2 months. Let's get back and succeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Thank you very much for this interaction. Your leadership, your constant interaction, your proactive outreach, and most importantly, your patience and understanding to listen to different sectors of industry is really, really a huge moment. I think you also get the full fully your ministries, and it was very evident here when you actually asked Mr. Anand Sarup and Mr. Pawan Agarwal both to actually take immediate action. this is one of the few VCs, Mr. Minister, that you've not actually picked up the phone and spoken to somebody at the other end and solved a problem. We know how proactive and how extremely attentive and quick thinking that you are, and your entire team, Mr. Pawan Agarwal, Mr. Anand Swarup, thank you very much for your leadership in these times. We've been actually getting, Mr. Minister, a combination of associations for meeting with you and interacting on different sectors. So we have the Association of Multimodal Transport Operators here. Thank you, Mr. Shantanu, for being here. We also have the Federation of Freight Forwarders Association. Thank you, Ramakrishna, for joining us this afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Reddy, President FICCI, and Mr. Sanjeev Mehta, Vice President FICCI, for joining us this evening. Also, Sanjay Bhatia, who is the CEO of Freightwala and the co-organizer of this program, and Daily Shipping Times for the media partnership. I know you mentioned Mr. Sid Salem, Mr. Minister. I was in actually a panel discussion just before this webinar with him. And three things actually came out, which I think you'll find very interesting. The first thing is that logistics has moved from just in time to just in case. So there's a huge mindset. The pandemic has actually made that happen. Second is that the COVID-19 has transformed the logistics sector, which was, a lot of people were anti-digitization. But contactless delivery and full digitization has actually accelerated exponentially to utter, amazement of everybody in the chain. And the third thing, and you've been so positive, you've been egging us on, and you've been motivating us, the target of 260 billion by 2026, a positive outcome of the COVID thing is it is going to be achieved much earlier than 2026. And I think all the stakeholders in this call will have to play a role in them. And thank you, Mr. Minister, for actually equating them with the COVID warriors, because they kept the wheels of the economy going, and really compliments to the railways going forward. So thank you, Minister, for this extremely positive interaction. And thank you all the panelists for being with here. Thank you.
Thank you. Good day to you. I hope all is well with you, Sangeeta ji, Dilip, all of you.
Yes, Minister. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The Prime Minister is also taking serious attention about all the work that you all have been doing. So furniture, he's already talked about furniture.
Yes, he spoke about it.
Leather. So he's really taking a lot of interest in the good work that all the associations and industry is doing. So we are committed to the effort that all of you are putting in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Piyush. Always a great inspiration. Thank you.
Thank you, Manav and team. Thank you, the FICCI team, for your inputs.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Anand.
And with this, we close the webinar. Thank you, all participants.
Okay, thank you.
I have to do only this one call.